Chapter 61. The appearance, situation, and number of the hells. In the spiritual world, or in the world where spirits and angels are, similar objects appear as in the natural world, or where men are. These are similar in that, as to external appearance, there is no difference. In that world appear plains and mountains, hills and rocks, and valleys between them, also waters and many other things that are seen on earth. But yet all these things are from a spiritual origin, and all appear therefore before the eyes of spirits and angels, and not before the eyes of men, because men are in the natural world. Spiritual beings see the things that are from a spiritual origin, and natural beings the things that are from a natural origin. Consequently, man with his eyes can in no way see the objects that are in the spiritual world unless he is permitted to be in the spirit, or after death when he becomes a spirit. On the other hand, an angel and a spirit are unable to see anything at all in the natural world unless they are with a man who is permitted to speak with them. For the eyes of man are adapted to the reception of the light of the natural world, and the eyes of angels and spirits are adapted to the reception of the light of the spiritual world, although the eyes of the two are exactly alike in appearance. That the spiritual world is such, the natural man cannot comprehend, and least of all the sensual man, who believes nothing except what he sees with his bodily eyes and touches with his hands, and therefore takes in by sight and touch. He thinks from these things, so his thought is material and not spiritual. Such being the likeness between the spiritual world and the natural world, man after death can hardly believe otherwise than that he is in the world where he was born and from which he has departed. For this reason they call death simply a transition from one world into another like it. That the two worlds are thus alike can be seen above, where the representatives and appearances in heaven have been treated of. The heavens are in the more elevated localities of the spiritual world, the world of spirits in those that are low-lying, and under both are the hells. The heavens are not visible to the spirits in the world of spirits, except when their interior sight is opened, although they are sometimes visible as mists or as bright clouds. This is because the angels of heaven are in an interior state as to intelligence and wisdom. And for this reason they are above the sight of those who are in the world of spirits. But spirits who are in the plains and valleys see one another, and yet when they are separated there, which takes place when they are let into their interiors, then the evil spirits do not see the good spirits, but the good spirits can see the evil spirits. Nevertheless, the good spirits turn themselves away from the evil spirits, and when spirits turn themselves away, they become invisible. But the hells do not appear because they are closed up. Only the entrances, which are called gates, are seen when they are opened to let in other like spirits. All the gates to the hells open from the world of spirits, and none of them from heaven. The hells are everywhere, both under the mountains, hills and rocks, and under the plains and valleys. The openings or gates to the hells that are under the mountains, hills and rocks appear to the sight like holes and clefts in the rocks, some extended and wide, and some straitened and narrow, and many of them rugged. They all, when looked into, appear dark and dusky, but the infernal spirits who are in them are in such a luminosity as arises from burning coals. Their eyes are adapted to the reception of that light, and for the reason that while they lived in the world, they were in thick darkness as to divine truths, because of their denying them, and were in a sort of light as to falsities, because of their affirming them. In this way did the sight of their eyes become so formed, and for the same reason the light of heaven is thick darkness to them, and therefore when they go out of their dens they see nothing. From all these things it has been made very clearly evident that man comes into the light of heaven just to the extent that he acknowledges the divine, and establishes with himself the things of heaven and the church, and that he comes into the thick darkness of hell just to the extent that he denies the divine, and establishes with himself the things that are opposed to those of heaven and the church. The openings or gates to the hells that are beneath the plains and valleys present to the sight different appearances. Some resemble those that are beneath the mountains, hills and rocks. Some resemble dens and caverns. Some great chasms and whirlpools. Some resemble bogs, and some standing water. They are all covered over, and do not open except when evil spirits from the world of spirits are cast in hither. And when they open, there bursts forth from them either something like the fire and smoke that is seen in the air from burning buildings, or like a flame without smoke, or like soot, such as comes from a burning chimney, or like a mist and thick cloud. It has been heard that the infernal spirits neither see nor feel these things, because when they are in them, they are as in their own atmosphere, and thus in the delight of their life. And this for the reason that these things correspond to the evils and falsities in which they are, namely, fire corresponding to hatred and revenge, smoke and soot to the falsities therefrom, flame to the evils of the love of self, and a mist or thick cloud to falsities from that love. I have also been permitted to look into the hells and to see what they are within. For when the Lord pleases, the sight of a spirit or angel from above may penetrate into the lowest depths beneath and explore their character, notwithstanding the coverings. In this way I have been permitted to look into them. Some of the hells appeared to the view like caverns and passages in the rocks, extending inward and then downward into an abyss, either obliquely or vertically. Some of the hells appeared to the view like the dens and caves of wild beasts in the forests. Some like the hollow caverns and passages that are seen in mines, with tunnels extending towards the lower regions. Most of the hells are threefold, the upper one appearing within to be in dense darkness, because inhabited by those who are in the falsities of evil, while the lower ones appear fiery, because inhabited by those who are in evils themselves, dense darkness corresponding to the falsities of evil, and fire to evils themselves. For those who have acted interiorly from evil are in the deeper hells, and those who have acted exteriorly from evil, that is, from the falsities of evil, are in the hells that are less deep. Some hells present an appearance like the ruins of houses and cities after conflagrations, in which infernal spirits dwell and hide themselves. In the milder hells, there is an appearance of rude huts, in some cases contiguous in the form of a city with lanes and streets, and within the houses are infernal spirits engaged in unceasing quarrels, enmities, fightings and brutalities, while in the streets and lanes robberies and depredations are committed. In some of the hells there are nothing but brothels, disgusting to the sight and filled with every kind of filth and excrement. Again, there are dark forests in which infernal spirits roam like wild beasts, and where too there are underground tunnels into which those flee who are pursued by others. There are also deserts, where all is barren and sandy, and where in some places there are ragged rocks in which there are caverns, and in some places huts. Into these desert places are cast out from the hells those who have suffered every extremity of punishment, especially those who in the world have been more cunning than others in undertaking and contriving intrigues and deceits. Such a life is their final lot. As to the positions of the hells in detail, it is something wholly unknown even to the angels in heaven. It is known to the Lord alone. But their position in general is known from the quarters in which they are. For the hells, like the heavens, are distinguished as to their quarters, and in the spiritual world quarters are determined in accordance with loves. For in heaven all the quarters begin from the Lord as the sun, who is the east. And as the hells are opposite to the heavens, their quarters begin from the opposite point, that is, from the west. On this, see the section on the four quarters in heaven. This is why the hells in the western quarter are the worst of all, and the most horrible, and why the more remote they are from the east, the worse and more horrible they become. Thus they become worse successively by degrees. In the western hells are those who in the world were in the love of self, and in consequent contempt of others, and in enmity against those who did not favour them, also in hatred and revenge against those who did not render them respect and homage. In the most remote hells in that quarter are those who had belonged to the Catholic religiosity, so called, and who had wished to be worshipped as gods, and consequently had burned with hatred and revenge against all who did not acknowledge their power over the souls of men and over heaven. These continue to have the same disposition, that is, the same hatred and revenge against those who oppose them, that they had in the world. Their greatest delight is to practice cruelties, but in the other life this delight is turned against them. For in their hells, with which the western quarter is filled, one rages against another who detracts from his divine power. But more will be said about this in the little work on the Last Judgment and the destruction of Babylon. Nevertheless, no one can know how the hells in that quarter are arranged, except that the most dreadful hells of that kind are at the sides towards the northern quarter, and the less dreadful towards the southern quarter. Thus the dreadfulness of the hells decreases from the northern quarter to the southern, and likewise by degrees towards the east. Towards the east are the dwelling places of the haughty, who had not believed in the divine, but had not been in such hatred and revenge or in such deceit as those who are in the greater depths in the western quarter. In the eastern quarter there are at present no hells, those who were there having been transferred to the western quarter in front. In the northern and southern quarters there are many hells, and in them are those who, while they lived in the world, were in the love of the world, and in various kinds of evil therefrom, such as enmity, hostility, theft, robbery, cunning, avarice, and unmercifulness. The worst hells of this kind are in the northern quarter, the milder in the southern. Their dreadfulness increases as they are nearer to the western quarter, and also as they are further away from the southern quarter, and decreases towards the eastern quarter and towards the southern quarter. Behind the hells that are in the western quarter there are dark forests, in which malignant spirits roam like wild beasts. And it is the same behind the hells in the northern quarter. But behind the hells in the southern quarter there are deserts, which have been described just above. These things regarding the situation of the hells. In regard to the number of the hells, there are as many of them as there are angelic societies in the heavens, since there is for every heavenly society a corresponding infernal society as its opposite. That the heavenly societies are numberless and are all distinguished in accordance with the goods of love, charity and faith may be seen in the section that treated of the societies of which the heavens consist, and in the section on the immensity of heaven. The like is true, therefore, of the infernal societies, which are distinguished in accordance with the evils that are the opposite of those goods. Every evil, as well as every good, is of infinite variety. That this is true is beyond the comprehension of those who have only a small idea regarding any one evil, such as contempt, enmity, hatred, revenge, deceit, and other like evils. But let them know that each one of these evils contains so many specific differences, and each of these again so many specific or particular differences, that a volume would not suffice to enumerate them. The hells are so distinctly arranged in order in accordance with the differences of every evil that nothing could be more perfectly ordered or more distinct. Hence it can be established that the hells are innumerable, near to and remote from one another in accordance with the differences of evils, generically, specifically, and particularly. There are also hells beneath hells. Some communicate with others by transits, and more by exhalations, and this in exact accordance with the affinities of one kind or one species of evil with others. How great the number is of the hells I have been permitted to realize from knowing that there are hells under every mountain, hill and rock, and also under every plain and valley, and that they stretch out beneath these in length and in breadth and in depth. In a word, the entire heaven and the entire world of spirits are, as it were, excavated beneath, and under them is a continuous hell. These things regarding the number of the hells.